The topic on which we are going to talk about is listening to news report for gist. There are four skills of language learning: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. If we talk about listening, that's very much crucial skill because it is the first step after which you comprehend the information and then you decode and then you code and then the steps go on. So listening is the most important skill in the language learning. What is listening? Listening is the first communication skill acquired by everyone. It is an invisible mental process that plays a vital role in daily lives. People listen for different purposes such as entertainment, academic purposes, or obtaining necessary information. These are some of the things, or these are some of the factors for which we listen. The one most important thing is it is an invisible mental process. It is basically taking place in your mind. There are many definitions of listening proposed by many experts. The very first is listening is the activity of paying attention to and trying to get meaning from something we hear. So it is paying attention. You cannot, according to this definition, you cannot listen or you cannot get meaning unless you are going to pay attention. Second, it is the ability to identify and understand what people are saying. So, in this definition, two aspects are there. One is from the speaker's perspective and the other is from the listener's perspective. So listening is basically, it's an ability, it's a process. The third one, this involves understanding a speaker's accent or pronunciation, his grammar and his vocabulary, and grasping his meaning. If we look into all the definitions or if we look into all the perspectives proposed by different language experts, everybody is of the opinion that it's an activity or it's an ability or it's the understanding that is taking place in the mind of the listener. And if you want to get the meaning of what the other person is saying, so there are certain factors. According to the first definition, it's about careful attention. For the second one, it's about identifying or understanding what the person is saying. Coming towards an innovation in the same field is the third definition, according to which excellent pronunciation is also very much important, because if you are not aware of the excellent pronunciation, or if you're not importantly, if you're not aware of the vocabulary, then it is going to be difficult to understand what the other person means. So every definition covers part of the process, and afterwards there is another. Added to this, it is also said that listening is also an active process which requires the listeners to participate in that process. And as we said earlier, how the listener is going to participate? The listener is going to listen cautiously or carefully, or the listener is going to become active while the speaker is going to tell something. It is also said that listening is a complex and active process. It's not only an active process, but it's also a complex process of interpretation, which listeners match what they hear with what they already know. If a listener is not able to make a connection of what he knows already, that's why he is not able to understand. Here comes the difference of the vocabulary, here comes the difference of grammar, here comes the difference of accent, here comes the difference of pronunciation. So if the things are not present already in the mind of the listener, then it becomes very much difficult for the listener to understand and to comprehend. That's why it is a complex process, because it is making the connection between what he already knows, and building on that connection he is making up his interpreting the things, and then he is just making a connection, and then he's assimilating and he is comprehending, and then he can produce what he has comprehended. Based on theory of communication, Rost views listening as a part of transactional process in which all participants are simultaneously sending and receiving messages. If we talk about participants, there are many like the speakers, the listeners, they are all the participants, and the speakers are sending the messages and the listeners are receiving the messages. He says definitions of listening are based on four orientations or perspectives. The first perspective is from the perspective of receptive, or listening is viewed as a receiving what the speaker actually says. The second, from the perspective of constructives, listening can be defined as constructing and representing meaning. The third one is viewed from collaborative perspective. Listening is negotiating meaning with speakers and responding it. The fourth and last one is from the view of transformative perspective. It means creating meaning through involvement, imagination, and empathy. So if we just look into all the perspectives, we will see that all the previous uh, definitions have been covered in all these, or they have covered all the definitions into this theory of communication. Coming towards the process of listening. Listening is an internal process. It has been said earlier that it is something that is taking place in the mind, or it's an active process which is taking place in the mind. It's an ability. It's a competence of a person. Some experts describe what happens as we listen. According to Underwood, there are three stages of oral processes. The very first thing is the sounds go into a quick memory for a very short time to be organized into meaningful units according to the knowledge of the language the listener already has. So this is having some information that sound is produced by the speaker, and it is going to stay in your short-term memory, and it is organized in the form of your already available knowledge. It means whatsoever the vocabulary, whatsoever the grammar, whatsoever the knowledge is already present in your mind, that is going to form the meaning. Those meaningful units will be comprised of your own available knowledge. The information is then processed by the short-term memory. That's the ability, or that's the process that is taking place in the mind. In a matter of seconds, words are checked and compared with information already held in the long-term memory, and meaning is extracted. So it's the process that is taking place. First it is in the short-term memory, and then it is just linking the available knowledge from the long-term memory that the knowledge is present, and then the meaning is extracted. The meaning extracted is stored in the long-term memory for later use. This can also be said that while you are listening, your new vocabulary is also building in this way that it is just picking or it is just sending the new words to your long-term memory. That's how the listening help in your comprehension. That's how the comprehension takes place, or the new words, that's how you learn the new words. Claudio and Miller describe the process of listening as follows. Auditory messages are first received by the sensory memory from the environment around us. The sensory memory activated and the message is held for a period of not more than 1 second. This is very much clear that when we are going to listen something, then we comprehend the meaning. If it is already, the knowledge is already there, and if the connection is being made, it is not going to take much time. In this period, the message is held in its exact form. Then, depending on a number of factors such as the quality of the messages, the urgency of the messages, and the course of messages, it is either passed on your short-term memory or lost. So there are few things which make the comprehension possible, and those are the quality of the messages, the urgency of the messages, and the course of the messages. Wilson distinguishes the process of listening comprehension into two categories: bottom-up processing and top-down processing. If we talk about bottom-up processing, he refers to the listener's decoding of the incoming message by analyzing it at the level of sounds, words, and sentences. In the top-down processing, he refers to the listener's use of background knowledge such as previous knowledge of the topic, situational or contextual clues, schemata or scripts stored in long-term memory. However, comprehension can only occur when the listener can place what is heard in a context. So, from Wilson's perspective, context is also very much important. We have discussed about the topic. We have discussed about the importance of listening. We have discussed what is listening, how the listening process takes place. We have also discussed the listening process from different perspectives, and we have also looked into definitions by different language experts. So the next thing is, what are the 4 listening levels? Listening is about others. The statement, it's about giving them what they want and what they need, because a speaker is speaking something because it has something, the speaker has something in his or her mind which he wanted to convey, and in response he wants something from the listener. So if the listener is not attentive, if the listener is not active, if the listener is not making able use of his skill, then the speaker's part cannot be fully acquired, or the speaker will not be able to have maximum of what he wanted to achieve. It's about connecting with others on many different levels. There are 4 levels of listening. And attentive presence, that's the very much thing that's required. Clarifying and interpreting meaning, that again, if we see, it is taking place in the mind, and providing empathy and acting generatively. So these are all the four levels that are from the listener as well as from the speaker's perspective, keeping in view that speaker and listener, they both are connected, they both have equal share in sharing of information. So we have discussed about listening, we have discussed listening as a skill, we have discussed listening from the perspective of different language experts, we have also discussed the process of listening, how it takes place, and now we are going to see how we can develop our listening skills. So here are 10 tips to help you develop effective listening skills. Step 1. Face the speaker and maintain eye contact. That's the very must thing, or that's the most important thing, because if you are not making a connection or eye contact, you are not giving importance to the speaker. Step 2 is being attentive but relaxed. You are going to maintain an eye contact, but eye contact must not be in the form of staring. So you need to relax, you need to have an eye contact, but it must not hinder or it must not make the speaker nervous. Step 3. Keep an open mind. Keep your mind active so that you can receive maximum information from the speaker. Step 4. Listen to the words and try to picture what the speaker is saying. That's something related to the context. So if you are talking to the speaker who you already know, you can make the image very clearly and very easily. But if the speaker is a new one, then you need to make a conscious effort to understand what the speaker is trying to say. So that's come the active process. Step 5. Don't interrupt and don't impose your solutions, because if you are going to hinder or if you are going to interrupt, it is not only going to disturb the speaker, but it is also going to break the picture which the listener or which you have already made in your mind. That picture can be distorted. Step 6 is wait for the speaker to pause to ask clarifying question. Step 7. Ask questions only to ensure understanding. Step 8. Try to feel what the speaker is feeling. That's about the empathy which we have discussed earlier. Step 9. Give the speaker regular feedback, but without disturbing or without breaking the point. Step 10 is pay attention to what isn't said, to non-verbal cues that will help in forming the picture in your mind. So what are the listening strategies? Listening strategies, there are few listening strategies which will help to develop your listening skills. Listening for just, you listen in order to understand the main idea of the text. Here you are listening to get the main idea. You are not going into the deeper level of what the speaker is going to say. Listening for specific information. You want to find out specific details, for example, keywords. You are going to pay attention once your point is going to come, or when or once your perspective is going to be there. listening for detailed understanding. You want to understand all the information the text provides. So, what does listening for just mean? Listening for just is when the learner tries to understand what is happening, even if he or she can't understand every phrase or sentence. Here, the learner can be the listener, he is a listener who is trying to understand what is happening. He cannot understand all the things, however, he is just making conscious effort, active effort to understand what the speaker is trying to say. The learner is trying to pick up keywords, intonation, and other clues so as to make a guess at the meaning. Context here again is going to help in making the meaning or making up the information that is being given by the speaker. So many things are important. Maybe the keywords are going to work for the listener. Maybe the intonation is going to work, and maybe the context that is familiar with the listener. So he is going to guess what the speaker is trying to say. Now we need to understand why the news is the most important media to improve your listening skills. There are two kinds of media used for broadcasting news. They are television news and radio news. TV as an audiovisual media provides voice and picture, while radio as an audio-lingual media provides only voice of the newsreader. The TV audiences are helped by the presence of the news read by the newsreader, the pictures and text screened. The TV audience can predict what the news is about by watching the pictures and read the text provided. Yet the radio listeners just listen to the news read by the newsreader. This is basically the difference between the two media, radio news and television news. If we see, the television news is providing different media, it is providing more opportunities to the listener to comprehend the meaning. TV media is having the text, it is having illustrations or pictures, it is having visuals, it is also having speaker in front of the listener. The picture can also help in understanding what the speaker is trying to say, just looking at the non-verbal clues that are depicted by the speaker or the newsreader. Otherwise, or anyhow, the radio listeners are in a little difficulty in a sense that they need to make conscious effort because they are only listening to the newsreader. They cannot see what is actually happening. The pictures in the TV ads or TV news, they can help in making the context. They can be considered or they can act as a context. Sometimes the reader is aware of the text, so he can understand the text and he can comprehend the listening, he can comprehend what is being said by the speaker. Coming towards the structure of news, it is stated that other structure of the news story, according to him, the news story consists of a lead and the body. Lead is the summary of the news which is put in the beginning of the news story. It is the important part of the news that will help readers or listeners to know the content of the news. The lead is something that is going to help you in building the context in your mind. The body, it is all of the stories in the news that explain the news lead. So this is basically the structure of the news, all the news which you are going to listen, that's how they are going to work. There is a lead and there is a body. So it's up to you whether if you want to take the gist, you can hear the lead and you can leave the body. But if you want to go for the detailed understanding, if you want to go for the detailed meaning, then you can just listen to the body as well. Similarly, it is also said that the structure of the news consists of newsworthy or news lead, background events, and sources. Newsworthy or news leads is the summary of the news, and background event tells about what has happened, for whom, and how. Sources are the comments from the actors, witnesses, and the experts in the events. These actors can be the ones, the newsreader, these witnesses, and the experts in the event. So you people are very much aware that in the news, who are the actors, who are the witnesses, who are the experts. If you are listening to the talk shows, they are the experts. If you are listening to the news and somebody is going to narrate an event that has happened, that's the witness, and the actors are the one who are taking part in the news in any of the form. Listening to the news. Earl summarizes 6 features of most real-life listening. Not all of these are relevant for listening to the news. However, they are going to help in the listening process. So that's why they are crucial. We listen for a purpose and with certain expectation. We make an immediate response to what we hear, not to the speaker, but sometimes to co-listener. We see the person we are listening to. There are some visual or environmental clues as to the meaning of what is heard. Stretches of heard discourse come in short chunks. Most heard discourse is spontaneous. These are the features of real life listening. They can be the part of the news listening, and they can be the other conversations that are going on. They are different, the media is different. There is no doubt that listening to radio news is a much greater challenge for the learner. TV news, on the other hand, provides visuals which give the learner clues to what is being said. We have discussed earlier that TV media provides with the picture, it provides with the picture of the speaker or newsreader, it provides with the text. So it is providing the learner or the listener with different clues. Not all learners make the most of these supports. Still, it is said that still not all learners make the most of these supports. It is important for the teacher to provide students with opportunities to practice developing non-linguistic strategies such as predicting so that they can make the most of their schematic knowledge. However, learners need to make conscious efforts. They need to have an active mind if they want to become active, if they want to become successful listeners, if they want to become the successful learners, because listening is going to help in comprehension, which is ultimately going to help in production. And writing, reading, and speaking are all the productive skills which requires the comprehension. So comprehension is the first step that is taking place in the listening section. So if this skill is good, that's how you can excel in all the other skills. There are several problems according to Underwood that are considered as barriers to the listening, or they are considered as undermining the process of the listening. So some of the problems are lack of control over the speed at which speakers speak. If you're listening to the news, then it is not possible for you to control the speed because they are speaking quite in a speedy way, and you cannot control the speed because you are not having the ability. Not being able to get things repeated because you cannot ask the speaker. However, this thing is possible in the form when you are having a recording of something, then the things can be repeated. However, sometimes it is possible that if you are in a live face-to-face situation, if you are talking to your higher ups, if you are talking to your somebody who is higher in a position, so you cannot not ask them to repeat the things again and again. So you need to listen to what is being said for once, and then you are going to assimilate. The problem is also because of the listener's limited vocabulary. Then the other problem is failure to recognize the signals to make the connection between the context and the vocabulary. Problems of interpretation. Now, problems of interpretation are arising because of the limited vocabulary, because of inability to recognize the signals. You are not able to make the connection between the context and between the vocabulary because your vocabulary is quite less, so you cannot interpret what is being said. Inability to concentrate. There are certain factors, most of them are the external ones. If we consider noise as one of the factors, so it is an external factor that can hinder the process of listening, and it can result in your inability to concentrate, whether you are in one-to-one or face-to-face conversation, or whether you are listening to the news. Establish learning habits. If you're listening to the news, so sometimes if you are not habitual of listening to the news, so you find it very much difficult, and at times you lose your interest and you just leave in between, and then the whole process is going to deteriorate because you are not going to improve your vocabulary, you are not going to recognize the signals, and you are having problems in the interpretation. So you are not able to concentrate because your learning habits or your listening habits are not that developed. If you're not habitual of listening to the news, then it is going to be a little difficult. Many learners believe that their greatest difficulty with listening is their inability to control the speaker speed. That has been discussed earlier, and that is going to be a very difficult task for the listener if they are not paying attention or if they are not actively involved in the listening process. Besides the above problems, learners still have problems identifying sounds and words. Although the news is clearly articulated, some problems with connected speech cause difficulties. One of such difficulty is assimilation, that is, the blending of words at their boundaries. And that comes under the vocabulary portion. If your vocabulary is not that developed, that will make it difficult to assimilate what is being said by the speaker. Field in Besquill points out that learners often fail to recognize a known word when they hear it in continuous speech because the end of the word has been modified. Sometimes, if we talk about this, can happen if the accent or pronunciation is unfamiliar to the listener. If the listener is not habitual to listening to the news, then they will find it difficult because they cannot understand that word. Now coming towards the goal of listening to the news, the goal of assigning students with this task is to train them with the challenging listening material, and finally they are expected to improve their listening ability. This will also help in establishing learning habits or listening habits, and ultimately it will lead to effective listening skills. It will lead to acquiring effective listening skills. There are several reasons why students are asked to listen to the news. News stories are short, usually lasting for 3 to 4 minutes each. News stories provide students with various topics on events happening around the world. News stories provide students with various accents of the newsreader. News stories introduce students to new vocabularies and expressions set in natural context. News stories also provide the integrated skills of language. If we talk about this, integrated skills of language, then we can see that there are 4 skills: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So, while going through the news stories, you are not only comprehending what is being said by the newsreader, but with the headlines that are being given to you, that are being given in the form of the text, you are going to understand, you are going to improve your reading skills as well. Afterwards, if you are going to discuss it with any of your familiar person, with your friends, family, or colleagues, so it is going to improve your speaking skills, because you are going to use that vocabulary, then you are able to contextualize, and then you are going to use that in your writing. So that's how it is going to improve your skills, all the skills of language. News stories can be got and recorded easily. As we have discussed earlier, that sometimes it is not easy for the listener to understand or comprehend, and the barrier which we have mentioned was that you cannot record or you cannot repeat what the speaker is saying. However, in the case of news stories, you can record the things and you can listen to it over and over again, and you can contextualize what is being said by the speaker. So that's why listening to the news stories is actually will actually improve your listening skills. As the leads are very much short, you are providing with variety of topics, and it is going to improve your vocabulary, it is going to improve your accent, it is going to improve your ability to become active listener, because then your inbuilt knowledge or your inbuilt vocabulary will have more information. Then it is going to help you in assimilating in the simulation process. Then you can make connections, then you can contextualize the words, then you can interpret the words, and then you can comprehend the words more more in an easy way than if you are not habitual of listening to these. That's why these are the reasons why the students are being asked to listen to the news. Things why listening to the news is important, or why listening to the news will help in building the listening skills or in acquiring effective skills. The students will get a chance to listen to the correct English pronunciation. The students will become familiar with various accents of English. So this is going to help you in developing listening skills, because if you are not familiar with various accents, so then there is one portion of your listening that is being missed. The students will become skillful in understanding unfamiliar words, phrases, and sentences because the words, phrases, and sentences are sometimes, rather most of the time, they are connected to a typical register. The students can enrich their vocabulary since the news provides a wide range of vocabulary. The new words are added to your memory. The new words are added to your long-term memory. So if you are habitual of listening to the news, they are going to help you develop your vocabulary. Ultimately, it is going to make you contextualize those words with the help of the pictures the television news show you, and with the help of the text that is being given. So it is going to aid you in developing your different skills, not only your listening, but it is also going to help you in developing your other skills as well. Students are skillful in mapping their minds, especially related to what they have listened to, which is important in listening comprehension. Again, you know that listening comprehension, if we talk about listening comprehension, that is something when you listen and then you comprehend the meaning. So they become skillful in mapping their minds, in mapping what is being actually said with the help of the vocabulary words, with the help of the pictures, with the help of the text. They are going to shape in their mind about what is being said. And it is also going to help them in the longer run. It is going to be present in their long-term memory, and they can make use of it whenever something is coming over and over again. The students have also a lot of practice to listen to the normal speed of the speaker, even though it is hard for first few weeks, but ultimately it will become easier for the students if they are going to have the good habits, or if they become habitual of listening to the news over and over again. So we are going to conclude here. Assigning students to listen to the news is aimed to improve their listening ability. Thank you so much. Hope you are very much familiar with the context. You are very much familiar with what is the purpose of listening to the news, why you listen, what is the listening for the gist means. So hope the meaning is clear to you. Hope you have achieved the objective, what was meant earlier. Thank you so much.